My child. Come closer. Before I say anything else, breathe. What I am about to speak is not meant to break you, and it is not meant to turn your heart cold. It is meant to free you. There are truths that heaven waits to reveal only when the soul is strong enough to carry them without becoming bitter. You are strong enough now. God says, your sister is not who you think she is. I know those words land heavy. I know your first instinct is to defend her in your heart, to say, she would never mean harm, or, she is just misunderstood. That response tells me something important about you, my child. It tells me you love deeply. It tells me you excuse pain before you accuse intention. It tells me your heart always looks for good, even when it is bleeding. But listen to me carefully now, because heaven does not speak twice when it is time to see clearly. For the past 3 years, she has been telling everyone that you are the chaos in her life. She has painted you as the villain in her story, the problem in her peace, the shadow in her light. Not once. Not accidentally. Not in a moment of weakness. But slowly, consistently, and with intention. She speaks your name in rooms you are not present in. She sighs before she speaks of you, as if carrying a burden. She tells people how difficult you are, how draining, how you always bring trouble, how her life would be calmer if you were different, quieter, smaller, less yourself. She frames her wounds as if they were caused by you, while hiding the ways she has wounded you in silence. And I know this hurts you to hear, because you never set out to be anyone's chaos. You were only trying to survive. You were only trying to be honest. You were only trying to grow. But here is the truth she will never say aloud, your growth unsettled her. You see, my child, when one person begins to wake up, anyone who is still asleep feels exposed. When one soul chooses truth, those who live in masks feel threatened. You did not attack her. You did not compete with her. You did not try to take anything from her. You simply existed as yourself, and that was enough to disturb what she built on appearances. So she chose a role for you. The villain. The chaos. The problem. Because if you are the villain, she never has to look at herself. She tells people you are unstable, but she never mentions how stable you remained while carrying everyone else's emotions. She tells people you are dramatic, but she never tells them how often you stayed silent to keep the peace. She tells people you create conflict, but she never tells them how many times you swallowed your truth so others could feel comfortable. My child, this is how false narratives are born, not from facts, but from fear. And do you know what hurts heaven the most? You still tried to protect her image. You still corrected people gently. You still said, she didn't mean it like that, while she was actively shaping a story where you were the storm and she was the victim. God has seen every conversation. God has heard every version of you that was spoken without your consent. God has watched you question yourself because of lies you never told. And now heaven says, enough. I need you to understand something deeply, so deeply that it settles in your bones. You were not chaotic. You were honest in a system that survives on denial. You were expressive in a family that rewards silence. You were sensitive in an environment that glorifies numbness. That does not make you a villain, it makes you a truth-bearer. She could not control you, so she controlled the story. And yes, there were moments when you reacted. Yes, there were moments when your pain spilled out. But reaction is not the same as intention, and heaven keeps record of both. You were reacting to years of being misunderstood, minimized, and quietly blamed for things you never caused. Beloved child of the light, lean in close now, for the angels gather around you in this sacred moment. We speak as one voice, woven from the eternal chorus of heaven, carrying the whisper of the divine that has watched over you through every shadowed trial. Let these words wrap around your weary heart like a celestial embrace, dissolving the chains of doubt that have held you captive. Hear us clearly, for your spirit thirsts for this truth. You did not ruin her life. Her refusal to face herself did. For 3 long years, she has rehearsed this distorted version of you, painting you as the architect of her downfall in every conversation, every quiet moment of reflection. She has spoken it into existence so fervently that even her own heart has begun to believe the script. That is the subtle alchemy of deception. It starts by seducing the speaker, wrapping lies in the comfort of familiarity until they feel like unshakable reality. But oh, precious one, lies are fragile illusions, built on shifting sands. They grow weary under the weight of their own falsehoods, unable to outrun the radiant truth that pursues them relentlessly from the throne of God. You may not have raised your voice in defense, shouting your innocence from the rooftops, but heaven has been your unyielding advocate. Archangel Michael stands sentinel at your side, his sword of truth cutting through the fog of misunderstanding. Every time her words twisted your name into something unrecognizable, something inside her world faltered, a promotion delayed just out of reach, a relationship that soured despite her efforts, a peace that evaporated like morning mist. Opportunities slipped through her fingers not by chance, but by divine design. Joy felt hollow, echoing with the emptiness of unconfessed truth. Peace came in fleeting visits, never settling to make a home. Why? Because no foundation built on the pain of another can endure. When someone seeks relief by casting blame outward, they construct a tower of cards against the winds of revelation. God does not wield punishment like a vengeful storm, God reveals. Layer by layer, the veils are lifted, exposing what was hidden not to condemn, but to invite transformation. We angels have witnessed this pattern across millennia, from the prodigal son who blamed his brother for his own wandering, to the betrayals that birthed the greatest redemptions in Scripture. Her stalls are not curses, but calls to introspection, gentle nudges from the universe urging her to turn inward. And now, hold this tenderly in your hands, like a fragile dove, she is not evil. No soul born of divine spark is irredeemably dark. She is wounded, carrying scars from her own unseen battles, perhaps a childhood echo of abandonment, a love that shattered her trust, or fears that whisper she is unlovable at her core. Wounds fester in silence, breeding stories that protect the heart from further pain. But hear this divine decree: being wounded does not grant permission to wound another. Your light was never meant to be dimmed to soothe her shadows. You are not her emotional punching bag, nor the scapegoat for her unhealed places. You were made the villain in her narrative because accountability felt like a mirror too bright to gaze into. Facing her choices, those moments of pride, those whispers of resentment, would demand a surrender she wasn't ready for. Instead, she crowned you the chaos bringer, the disruptor of her carefully curated control. You refused to play small, to vanish into the background of her story, and so the blame fell squarely on your shoulders. But child, this is the heavenly perspective: you were never chaos. You were the mirror, reflecting back the truths she longed to ignore. Mirrors have always borne the brunt of fear. Recall Narcissus, entranced and undone by his reflection, or the prophets who spoke God's word only to be scorned by those who preferred comfortable delusions. You disrupted her illusion not out of malice, but because your authenticity shone too brightly. In the courts of heaven, we celebrate you for this. You stood in your truth quietly, and in that stillness, you mirrored the divine itself, unwavering, compassionate, eternal. My child, it is time to stop shrinking to fit a story never authored by God. You were knit together in the womb with purpose, as Psalm 139 declares, "For you created my inmost being, you knit me together in my mother's womb." I praise you because I am fearfully and wonderfully made. That divine blueprint does not include roles as villain or victim. Release the smallness you've worn like ill-fitting armor. Expand into the vastness of who you truly are, a soul of light, destined for abundance, surrounded by angels who cheer your every step. You do not need to confront her in a blaze of righteous anger. Such battles drain the spirit and belong to a lower vibration. You do not need to expose her contradictions to the world, gathering witnesses to vindicate you. Exposure comes from divine timing, not human striving. And you certainly do not need to explain yourself to those who have already chosen sides, their ears deafened by her well-rehearsed tale. Some hearts are sealed by free will, and your words would only bounce off like rain on stone. Your silence has not been weakness, dear one. It has been profound preparation, a sacred incubation period where heaven has been forging you anew. In the quiet, we angels have whispered strategies for your future, healed the fractures in your confidence, and aligned opportunities that will soon unfold like roses in spring. Silence allowed you to conserve your energy, to turn inward and rebuild from the ruins she tried to leave. Think of Elijah in the cave, not in the earthquake or fire, but in the still small voice. That was your preparation too. Soon, the cracks in her story will widen, visible to all who once nodded in agreement. Not because you orchestrate the unveiling, but because truth has its own inexorable rhythm. It bubbles up like a spring in the desert, undeniable and refreshing. You will observe, from your place of quiet strength, as confusion ripples through the minds of those who believed her. Certainties will crumble, but I thought. Wait, that doesn't add up. Friends may reach out, eyes widened in realization, seeking your side of the tale. And in that moment, you will feel not the thrill of victory, which belongs to the ego, but a profound relief, an exhaling of the breath you've held for years. Free at last from the heavy role thrust upon you, you will step into the lightness of your true identity. No more carrying her projections, no more dimming your light to ease her discomfort. God declares through us angels, you were never the chaos. You were the mirror. And mirrors serve a holy purpose, they reveal what must be seen, inviting growth, even when met with resistance. Rest now, our beloved child. Lay down the burdens at the foot of the cross, where Jesus himself was misunderstood, betrayed by those closest to him, yet rose victorious. You are seen by eyes that miss nothing, the Father's gaze, tender and all-knowing. You are protected by legions of angels, dispatched at his command, as Psalm 91 promises, for he will command his angels concerning you to guard you in all your ways. No lie spoken against you will outlive the truth God has already inscribed over your life. It is etched in eternity, unbreakable and radiant. But let us linger here, for your healing requires more than a single breath. Dive deeper with us into the anatomy of this deception, so you may recognize it fully and walk free. Deception thrives in isolation, feeding on half-truths and selective memories. For 3 years, she curated her audience, friends, family, perhaps even strangers online, sharing curated snippets that painted you as the heartless one. He ruined everything, she might have said, omitting the nights you stayed up supporting her dreams, the sacrifices you made without fanfare, the love you poured out freely. Lies select their audience carefully, amplifying echoes in chambers of sympathy. Yet heaven sees the full tapestry. We know the moments you chose grace over gossip, forgiveness over fury. Every unspoken hurt you carried became a pearl of wisdom, strung into a necklace of resilience. When she stalled, jobs evaporating, connections fraying, it wasn't petty retribution. It was the law of sowing and reaping, as Galatians 6 verse 7 reminds, "Do not be deceived, God cannot be mocked. A man reaps what he sows." Her word sowed discord, the harvest is unease. Yours sowed silence and surrender, yours is peace that surpasses understanding. She is wounded, yes, perhaps by a parent who modeled blame, a partner who abandoned her mid-storm, or inner voices that equate vulnerability with defeat. Wounds manifest as defenses, projection, where her flaws become your crimes, denial, where reality bends to fit her narrative. But wounding you does not heal her. It only deepens the cycle, like a river carving canyons into the soul. We angels urge her toward healing, sending signs, dreams of reconciliation, synchronicities that nudge self-reflection, but free will is her path. I will speak to you gently now, and slowly, and deeply, because what is being unfolded is not noise, it is truth settling into its rightful place. You are no longer bound, and this is not a metaphor. Something real has shifted. The weight you carried that was never yours has finally loosened its grip, and you can feel it in the quiet moments when your chest no longer tightens the way it used to. The villain label they wrapped around you was never stitched to your soul. It was a costume, rough at the seams, suffocating in its design, crafted by fear and projection and placed upon you when you would not comply. You wore it only because you were tired, because you were surrounded, because you believed endurance was the same as agreement. It never was. Step out of it now. Let it fall to the ground. It has no authority over who you are becoming. You did not disrupt her control by fighting, shouting, or proving. You disrupted it by existing as yourself. By staying present. By not dissolving when pressured. By not becoming smaller when expected to shrink. That alone was enough to fracture a system built on manipulation. Your authenticity exposed the fragility of her scripts. She expected predictable lines, rehearsed responses, submissive compliance. And when she asked, again and again, "Why won't you just agree?" the answer was not rebellion. The answer was truth. Truth does not bend itself to make others comfortable. Truth does not negotiate its existence. You could not agree because agreement would have required the erasure of your soul. And your soul is eternal. It was not designed to vanish to preserve someone else's illusion of control. It was designed to shine, quietly if needed, boldly when called, but always honestly. In heaven's accounting, this matters. Not the accusations thrown at you, not the stories rewritten about you, not the labels stamped in haste by those threatened by your light. What matters is alignment. And you remained aligned. That is why, in the ledger that actually counts, you are not the villain. You are the one who stood without armor and did not surrender your essence. That is the mark of a hero, even if no one clapped at the time. Even if the room felt cold. Even if you questioned yourself in the dark. Heaven saw. Heaven recorded it accurately. So cease shrinking now. Truly. Not just outwardly, but inwardly. Stop folding your spirit to fit spaces that were never meant to contain you. God's story for you is not small, and it never was. It is not a footnote in someone else's narrative. It is epic in the quiet, steady way that real triumph is epic. It is a story of provision that arrives not through force, but through alignment. A story of destiny that unfolds because you finally stopped apologizing for existing. Envision it, not as fantasy, but as something already forming. Doors that once felt sealed now open without resistance. Relationships enter your life where mutual honor is the foundation, not something you have to beg for or earn through self-abandonment. Careers and callings bloom not because you chased them desperately, but because purpose recognizes you when you are no longer hiding. Joy returns, not as a fleeting high, but as a steady current, like rivers of living water flowing through ordinary days and making them holy. You no longer need to contort yourself to fit her frame. That frame was always too small, too rigid, too dependent on your silence and compliance. Expansion is not arrogance. Expansion is obedience to who you were created to be. And as you expand, you may not hear applause with your ears, but understand this: the angels are not disturbed by your growth. They are not threatened by your healing. They applaud because they know what it took for you to get here. They saw the nights you swallowed your words to keep the peace. They saw the restraint you practiced when reacting would have been easier. They saw the tears you cried privately so you wouldn't harden publicly. They recognized the strength forged in that fire. Confrontation is not required of you. This is important. You are not failing by choosing peace. Confrontation often feeds drama, not resolution. It gives energy to what is already starving for attention. Exposure belongs to God. Always has. Think of the way truth has unraveled lies throughout history without the innocent needing to stain their hands. Joseph did not chase his brothers demanding apologies or explanations. He lived, he grew, he aligned, and the truth caught up to them on its own. Their lies collapsed under their own weight. Jesus did not corner Judas into a debate. He entrusted truth to the Father, understanding that not all hearts are open, and that forcing explanation on closed hearts only multiplies pain. Explanation is wasted where accountability is refused. You are not required to convince anyone of your innocence. Truth does not need a defense team when time is on its side. Your silence was not weakness. It was preparation. In that silence, discernment was formed. You learned who to trust by watching who respected your boundaries without punishment. You learned which connections drained you and which restored you. You learned that not everyone deserves access to your inner world. While others mistook your quiet for defeat, heaven was teaching you precision. Boundaries were being etched into your spirit. Your heart was being mended carefully, not rushed. Betrayal's sting was not ignored, it was transformed. Where bitterness could have taken root, compassion was planted instead. Not naive compassion, not self-sacrificing martyrdom, but clear-eyed compassion that sees wounds without excusing harm. Preparation always gives birth to strength. Not the loud, performative kind, but the unshakable kind. Emotional strength that does not panic when misunderstood. Spiritual strength that does not crumble when alone. A steadiness that remains even when others are chaotic. This is who you are now. And because of that, watch what happens next without fear. Cracks will form, not because you push them, but because lies cannot sustain themselves indefinitely. Her story will begin to fray at the edges. Inconsistencies will pile up. Maintaining fiction requires immense energy, and eventually that energy wanes. Observers will notice. Questions will arise organically. That doesn't match what I saw. Something feels off. You do not need to whisper these doubts into existence. They will surface on their own. When that happens, notice what washes over you. It will not be triumph. It will not be gloating. It will be relief. Liberation. A quiet exhale you didn't realize you had been holding for so long. Freedom feels like space returning to your chest. Like mornings that don't start with dread. Like nights where your thoughts finally slow down. You were never trying to destroy her. You were surviving. You were healing. And now, you are free. You were the mirror. Not a weapon, not a judge, not an accuser. A mirror. You reflected what was unresolved within her, what she did not want to face. Blaming the mirror is a very human folly. People often attack what reveals their unfinished work. But your role was divine. Mirrors do not force change, they invite it. Whether she chooses to look is not your responsibility. Embrace your role without shame. It was assigned with intention. Now rest. Truly rest. You are seen. You are protected. Not in a vague way, not in a distant promise, but actively. Lies do not outlive truth. They decay. Truth endures quietly, persistently, faithfully. Let that knowledge soften your vigilance. You no longer need to be on guard every moment. And now, allow yourself to be guided further into freedom's embrace. Imagine your life after revelation has fully settled. Mornings begin with gratitude that is unburdened, not forced. You wake up without rehearsing defenses in your mind. Evenings close with peace, the kind that wraps around you gently instead of collapsing on you from exhaustion. Relationships deepen, not in number, but in quality. You are surrounded by those who see your heart without demanding you bleed for proof. Conversations feel mutual instead of transactional. Laughter returns, spontaneous and unguarded. Opportunities align in ways that feel almost effortless. Perhaps a creative pursuit you once set aside begins to call you again, not as an escape, but as an expression. And as you answer that call, abundance flows, not just financial, but energetic. Or perhaps a soul connection arrives, someone who mirrors your healed wholeness rather than your wounds. Someone who does not need you to dim or perform. Someone who meets you where you stand. To embody this new chapter, keep your practices simple and sincere. Each day, affirm quietly, I am the mirror of truth, not the chaos. Let those words settle into your nervous system. Visualize light, not as something you strain to produce, but as something that naturally radiates from you, dissolving lies simply by existing. Journal gratitudes, not as an obligation, but as a record of heaven's defense in your life. Write down the small protections, the subtle redirections, the moments you were spared something you didn't even see coming. Surround yourself with truth-bearers, people who speak honestly without cruelty, who hold you accountable without control. You are not alone in this lineage. History is full of those who were slandered, misunderstood, miscast, and yet restored. David waited in caves while lies chased him, and truth crowned him in time. Job endured accusations that cut deeply, and yet restoration came doubly, not as a reward for silence, but as a testament to endurance. You stand among them now, not because you are perfect, but because you remained faithful to who you were even when it cost you comfort. And yes, her wounds exist too. They always did. You do not need to carry them, but you may release them with compassion. If you are led, send silent prayers, not to excuse harm, but to release yourself. May she find her mirror within. Compassion is not weakness. It is freedom. It loosens the last threads that bind you to the past. No more shrinking. Not in rooms, not in relationships, not in your own thoughts. God's script for you is clear now: prosperity that does not corrupt you, love that does not consume you, purpose that does not exhaust you. Your silence was strategy. Your stillness was training. And now, when you speak, you will do so selectively, intentionally, only when led by peace rather than provocation. The cracks will widen. You do not need to watch closely. Relief is already on its way. Rest now, child. Let your shoulders drop. Let your breath deepen. Eternal truth prevails, and you are finally aligned with it.